And welcome to another episode of Experts Speak. I'm Michael DeLon, and today I am talking with Allan Draper. Allan, thanks for squeezing me into your calendar so we can chat today.
Yeah, happy to be here.
Man, it's going to be a great conversation. Allan is out of the Phoenix area. He's got, he does so many things. Entrepreneur, business growth expert. He's got 2 podcasts, including the one that's called the Business Growth Pod. You should listen to that. And he helps business owners take thoughts, create them into ideas, into businesses. He helps businesses scale. We're just going to get into all kinds of fun stuff. And but as we get there, Allan, tell us, how in the world did you get to doing what you do today?
That's kind of a funny question. And I joke around with my kids and I tell them, that I'm still not sure what I want to do when I grow up. Because I've got my hands in so many different things. And I think it started when I was a kid. I always had like these odd and ends type of jobs, like raking leaves, mowing lawns. I was a paper boy for probably 3 or 4 years.
Did that.
You also, Michael?
I was a long time ago. Second largest route in Kokomo, Indiana, way back in the day, buddy.
That's awesome. So, so you understand, like I did back then, this idea of hustle, this idea of going out and creating something. I grew up in a small farming community on the Oregon-Idaho border, big potato, onion farmers out there. And I went to college always with this idea that I was going to be an entrepreneur. I think it's in my blood, this idea of, being able to create something. I love so much about being a business owner, but the top few are, one, I get to create something that doesn't exist unless I put some resources together. 2, I love the control that you can get over your time. 3, I like the financial benefit. So there's all these things, but it was in my blood growing up. I went to school. I did an undergrad at Brigham Young University in Utah. Then I ended up going to law school. Went to Arizona State and practiced law for a while. So I was kind of headed down that path. But honestly, Michael, in the back of my mind, I always knew that I would be an entrepreneur, whether it was a law firm or something else. And fast forward about a decade and, a couple of businesses under my belt. And one of those businesses is actually a law firm, but I don't practice law. I'm the business guy.
Huh. That's very cool. I love it. I'm the business guy. That could be a great positioning for you, the business guy, because you've been able to do what a lot of entrepreneurs and small business owners haven't been able to crack the nut on. They haven't been able to figure out that code of how do you create a business but not have it suck the life out of you? How do you not be that employee? Because owning a business without it owning you is it not a trick, but there's something to it, right?
Yeah.
Talk about that.
I mean, that's everybody's story, right? It's this idea of, hey, I'm going to start something. I remember when I was practicing law and I had this first foray into pest control. That was my first non-real estate business, was pest control. And I remember thinking, like, I had these long days as an attorney, as you can imagine. And I remember thinking, I love that I'm going to be able to control my time when I start this company, because it was already in the back of my mind. We're working on it. And I quickly realized, Michael, that I had less time than I did as an employee at a law firm, as an attorney.
Yeah.
And I realized that I needed really good people around me. So there's 2 tricks to getting out of that. And some people, Michael, just aren't willing to do it.
Yeah.
Number 1, you have to be a risk taker.
Yeah.
Number 2, you have to put yourself in a position where you're okay hiring people and allowing them to do certain activities and control certain facets of your business. If you don't do those 2 things, you can have a small company and have some control over your time, but you're not going to really be able to scale it very much.
That's right. Yeah. And that's one, and I love and I hope everybody heard that, because you're parroting and echoing what I tell my clients in audience all the time. My business, I mean, I've been doing this 11 years now, right? Yeah. And it was a solopreneur for a number of years. And then I remember,
Mhm.
dude, my knees were knocking when I realized I needed to hire somebody. How can
Mhm.
I afford them? What are they going to do? How am I going to train them? What are they going to do it as well as I? But here's what I found. Every time I've hired somebody properly and trained them well and let them go, my business has grown. But you have to do it right. And it's scary as all get out, right?
Mhm.
But to realize, and Allan, my audience knows this, you don't know. I only do 4 things well in life. Okay. I do all 4 of them wicked well. But I've learned that outside of those 4, I'm mediocre at
Mhm.
that. So I've hired people, built systems all around me
Mhm.
so that I can scale my business, because I look at a business like the E-Myth did. I need to be able
Mhm.
to hold my
Exactly.
business out in front of my hand and say, there it is. I'm not operating in my business. My business now, I'm in my business, but it doesn't depend on me. Is that what you think about when you think business?
No, that's, I mean, you summed it up, perfectly. And mentioning Michael Gerber's The E-Myth is, that's a landmark book that kind of addresses this idea of, if you want a business. So a lot of people say if your business doesn't work without you, you don't have a business, you have a job. I would take that step further for the folks that are really trying to scale their businesses. And I would say if your business doesn't grow without you, then you don't have a business, you have a job.
That's good.
And I think a key part of this, I was chatting with a couple that owns a climbing gym here in Arizona.
Yeah.
And they were telling me that they're in this process of kind of letting go of the reins a little bit. And she says to me, we just haven't gotten to the point where we feel comfortable turning it over to somebody else. And we haven't found that person that we feel comfortable with. And I said, what's funny is that the comfort, being comfortable with it, being okay with that move isn't going to happen until after you do it.
That's
That's the
right.
tough thing. And I think that goes back to the risk that I addressed earlier,
Yeah.
that you have to have this mentality of, which is really hard, Michael, right? These companies,
Gosh,
there are
yeah.
blood, sweat, and tears. These are our babies. This is like, the proverbial mother handing her baby over to somebody at daycare on her way to work or whatever,
Yeah.
right? These are our babies. This is something that, we put everything into. And I get it. I'm not saying it's easy. I'm just saying it's necessary.
That is so good. So I was with a friend the other day, and he was telling me he was sitting in his kitchen looking at out his window at a bird's nest. And the mother had like 3 little bird chicks, right? And he said this mother was kicking them out of the nest because it was time. And he said the third one was like resisting, going, I ain't going, mom. She got him out of and he fell and he fell and he started flapping his wings. And it was very uncomfortable for him. But after that,
Mhm.
I bet he's flying like greatness now,
Mhm.
right? But you're right, it is super scary. And
Mhm.
too many times we get locked into that fear, thinking they're going to kill my business. It's going to be over. And I really believe as entrepreneurs, I mean, it's in my DNA and your DNA, I think. Um, if my business were to collapse in the next month, I would find something else to do. I'd either resurrect it or I would go
Oh
create
yeah.
something else. And I think that's what that helps me hire people to realize I've got processes and systems and things, but if something happens, I'm going to be okay.
Yeah. No, I think that's a great point. And in a lot of ways, when I'm just addressing stress generally, fears generally, I go to that. And I think this is a Tim Ferriss idea back
Hmm.
from his book, The 4 Hour Work
Work
Week.
week. Yeah.
And I think in the beginning of the book, he talks about analyzing fear and stress. And he says, go to that worst case scenario.
Yeah.
And the thing is that 90+% of the time, it doesn't happen. I think with entrepreneurs, we think no one is going to be able to do this better than we can. So we can't hand over the reins. And
Absolutely.
you're going to surprise yourself because you're going to find somebody that's way better than you. And
Yeah.
it's funny because I'm kind of at the point now where pretty much everybody that I work with. So I've had meetings all day today. I've had meetings with accountants. I've had some meetings with some mortgage officers. I have a meeting with a marketing director in about 30 minutes. Every one of those people are better at their job than
Yeah.
I am at their
Absolutely.
job.
Absolutely.
And so I've got beyond this now. The other aspect, so one aspect of handing over the reins is ability. The other aspect, which I think is the tougher of the two, Michael, is the care, right? It's like, okay, they're able to do this, but do they care at the level that I care? And the answer is going to be no. This is your baby.
Right.
This is, what you've worked for. Here's the kicker, is that there are things that you can do that will help people get to maybe not match your level of care and concern for the business, but get really close.
Yeah.
And I've been honing that in for the last, decade, but every once in a while I'll hear somebody that works for one of my companies talk about us and my and our and those types of words. And I know they're taking really good care of our companies.
Yeah. And I want to dive into that, honestly, because I think if we're going to give great value to my audience and help people, it's how do you do that? So I've got one of my coaches, I've got 3 marketing coaches that look at my business, right? And one of them is asking me about culture and what's the culture like in your business? And we have a really, really good culture and goals and values. And he said, how much do your people know that? And I went, ooh, I need to do better at communicating who we are at our DNA level to our team. So they have that. Unpack that a little bit more. What have you learned? How can a business owner, how can somebody listening to this take that one next step to go, I need to move on that?
Yeah, gotcha. So number one, your employees and the people you surround yourself with, they need to be paid market level, a commensurate income, so that they don't have to worry about it. Let's get that off the table. A lot of people are like, Allan, do you pay these people 8-10 times market value, and that's how they care? That's actually not it. That's not it at all. Money's like number 3 or 4 down on the list of motivation for professional purposes. People think it's number 1, but it's not. So let's get that off the table. You have to pay them what market value, and then maybe some incentives, but it's more than that. And you have to get the right people. There's a Simon Sinek, I think it's one of the most viewed YouTubes of all time, called The Golden Circle.
Yeah.
And his words kind of echo in my ears. And I watched it probably about a decade ago when I started my first business. And one thing that he said is, if you if they're working for money, that you'll have their time. But if they're working because they believe what you believe, you'll have their heart.
Yeah.
So you have to establish a mission, core values, principles, whatever you want to call it. Those aren't just like canned words and that belong on a poster that you stick up, it gets dusty or whatever, up on the wall or whatever, that's not reviewed. You have to, that's why the greatest movements and the greatest companies, they have people that believe in the purpose of the company. And when you get somebody, and not everybody is a right match for that. Not everyone's going to believe what you believe. But in order for that to happen, number one, you have to find out what it is you believe. What are my principles? What are the things that I'm going to go after that have absolutely nothing to do with money?
Yeah.
And number two, how am I going to communicate that on a regular basis, starting with the interview process and the application process? With one of my companies, when we do an initial phone screening, and at that phone screening, before we schedule an in-person interview, we tell them, hey, go to our website, go to proofpest.com/core values, and make sure that you know those really well, because that's what we're going to be talking about in your in-person interview.
See, that's awesome, because in doing that, you're vetting your prospects of your employees, right? So when they show up, if they've actually done that they're already a good fit, and they're looking forward to, and they are saying, this is my kind of company. Okay.
No, that's 100%. And people are always like, well, how do I, and I always say that some of my biggest mistakes and some of my biggest successes both come from who I've hired. So some of my biggest failures have been, I hired the wrong person. Some of the biggest success have been hiring the right person. Yeah. But, and it's difficult. It's a very difficult thing to do. I've hired 500, 600, 700 people myself.
Yeah.
But one of the tricks is you use those core values early on in a screening session to see how much they care.
Yes.
Like when someone comes in and they don't have any questions about your company, and they don't have any questions about the core values you ask them to read, and they don't, like, their eyes don't light up. And when you talk about how a big part of what we're trying to do is to give back to our communities and in ABC type, ways, if they don't light up with that, maybe push them to the bottom of the list.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Because you're not looking for a warm body to fill a seat to do a task. That's not what you're really looking for in business. You want somebody who can eventually really replicate you. And now it might take multiple people, but you as the business owner, you're the thought leader. I've been thinking about this recently. I read a book over Christmas, and it was a CEO does only 3 things, and it's culture, people, and money. That's what a CEO really does in a company. And I thought, I need to function more like that, and business owners need to function more like that. And that starts with thinking that way. And the value that Allan brings to the table is the experience and the objectivity to your business to help you start thinking that way, because everything starts with a thought, right? Stephen Covey told us years ago in 7 Habits, you imagine something and then you make, there are 2 creations, and it's the
see the end from the beginning. Yep.
Absolutely. And so many times business owners are so stuck in the business, we don't have any time at all, Allan, to think, because I'm so busy doing. That's why you need to talk to Allan and go, okay, help me out here. Talk about some of the frustrations that the clients have, and before they come to you, and then how do you help them just start to transition and get to a point where they can actually grow their business? Because what I find is most businesses are growable, but it takes some different thinking, some different systems and things. What are some things that people come to you and they're struggling with, and how do you help them kind of break through and get to that growth area?
There's so much in beginning a business that is the chicken and the egg question. There's so much. It's like, hey, do I do I get all this money in place saved up and then hire somebody, or do I hire somebody first and then get the money? And so I think that's a really big part of it, is helping young entrepreneurs, early entrepreneurs, prioritize their time and the projects that they're working on. And when somebody comes to me and they're like, hey, Allan, I don't have time to think, right? That's such a common thing. And I went through it myself, and sometimes I experience it myself. And it's like, well, kind of going back to Stephen Covey, he talked about how we need to spend a lot of our time in quadrant 2, which is things that are important, but not urgent. So you have to, about 80% of your time, 70+% of your time, you want in that quadrant. So in order to get there, you need help. You need to be organized. You need to surround yourself with really good people, but then you have to find out which comes first. In order to get to that point, Michael, what I do is I say, kind of using another one of Stephen Covey's principles, let's see the end from the beginning. Let's look 5-10 years down the road. Where are you? What are you doing? And then we work backward. That helps us kind of figure out what the priorities are and the things that we should be working on.
Yeah. And that's so good, that word there, priority. So a mentor of mine has driven this in my mind, tattooed it on my brain, this 3-word phrase: priority drives behavior. And I tell business owners and people all the time, it's like, show me your calendar, tell me what you're doing, I will tell you your priorities.
Exactly.
Don't bring me excuses. This is what's important to you, because that's what you're doing. If you tell me you have a different priority, then let's schedule it and let's make it happen. If focus time, as I tell my clients, focus time, a 1 to 2 hour block every week to work on your business, if that's a priority, put it on there, make it happen. We are just we make excuses, but we're habitual. We don't take the time to try to break that habit by doing something different. Speak to the business owner who's out there going, okay, that sounds good. What transformation wise, taking a business that's doing $500,000 to $3 million, doesn't matter, right? Revenue. Any of those can pivot to start producing more revenues without grinding it away, because there are just little things that need tweaked, right? Talk about the future, the hope, not just the money, but the free time to get back that you help people get.
Yeah, that's kind of an interesting point that you make about how there's a way to do it without grinding your way through it. And if we're talking about people that have a company that they're doing 3 million or north of that in gross revenue, the only way to get to the next level is without grinding. that's quite a bit of revenue.
Yeah.
There's even to get to that point, you have some really good systems and some really good people in place. And then you just, you continue to leverage those things. I wanted to say this, Michael, and it's going to sound super cheesy. And I'm a logical, linear. I have a law degree, for heaven's sakes. It's very logical, and a lot of reasoning went into a lot of my career before. And then I got to this point where it was like, I'm limiting myself just because of how I'm thinking about it. And when I change it, when I'm looking to change myself, the very first thing that I try to change is how I think.
Yep.
Who are the people that I'm surrounding myself with that elevate how I think? I just went to the Masters. I was at the Masters golf tournament in Augusta. I go every year. And I was with this incredible group of guys, and just really high performers, successful businessmen, motivated, wealthy, good family men, great in their communities, great in their churches. They just did so much. And just spending a couple of days with them just changed my thought process. Yeah. And so if you're talking about really scaling your company, number one thing you have to do is get rid of all of these limiting beliefs that tell you that you can't do it, that you're not good enough, that you don't have the resources, that you don't have the best ideas, that you don't have the people around you that you need. You have to get rid of all of that and stop looking at what you don't have, start looking at what you do have, and start looking at what's possible. And then go through this process of, identifying those long-term goals and just envisioning that you've already achieved them. How does that make you feel? And when we have something in our mind, when we are focused on something, we are going to find the solution. We're going to find the way to get it.
Yep. I love that. I love that. I love that. Thank you. Go rewind, listen to that again, because golly jeepers, that is it. That is the starting place, because otherwise we just keep hitting the wall, right? I read the book. I'm looking at it right now, called The One Thing. Gary Keller, great book. And he talks about in there, bringing it down to one thing. But here's the line that I got out of that I repeat like every day, right? Is think big, aim high, act bold. That's a mind shift. And I'm surrounding my people right now, Allan, with entrepreneurs and mentors who have achieved probably 20 times more in business and revenue than I'm doing right now, because that's where I want to go.
Exactly.
And I know they think differently than I think. That's what's going to change my business.
Yeah, that's the ideal. As human beings, we love and we feel comfortable being the big fish in a small pond. But what we're doing in that situation is we're really limiting our growth. If we want to grow, we want to really get to the next level, you have to seek out, actively look for the opportunities to be the smallest fish in the pond.
Yeah. And be willing to pay for it. I tell people all the time, I mean, I've got 3 marketing coaches I pay to look into my business because I'm too close to it, right?
Yep.
And we've got to get away from this. Well, how much does that cost? No. Look at the value year after year after year, compound value of learning from somebody like Allan, to go, dude, you've done a lot in your life and you're a great communicator. And okay, what can I learn from Allan? Well, that lid's pretty open, right? But when you change 1 or 2 aspects of how you think, how you do your business, you start growing, and it builds self-confidence. It removes a bunch of fears, because you can do it now. Now you know that you know that you know. Okay, what does that do for you? That's worth more than all the money you're ever going to get. Because if something happens to the economy, if your business goes away, are you going to be okay? And are you going to be able to redo it all over again? Absolutely. Yeah. No problem.
No, I think that's a great point. I and an example, I recently hired a golf coach, and the price is it's a lot. But the way that I came to terms with it was, I asked myself, hey, Allan, how much would you pay to reach your goals with golf? Right. And it's like, oh, dang, I would pay a lot more than I'm paying my coach. And so people that are in that situation where they're like, I don't know if I'm going to pay for this course, or I'm not going to pay for this coach. It's like, don't ask yourself like, hey, how much is it? Ask yourself, there are 2 questions. Ask yourself, 1, how much would I pay to realize my dreams, whatever those are, business, financial, family, whatever those are that you're focused on. How much would I pay to realize my dreams? Number two, can this individual, can this course, can this, whatever it is, this resource help me get there? Those are the only two questions.
Yeah.
Don't ask yourself how much it costs. That's not relevant.
So good. So good. Because this, I'm so glad we got here today, because we can talk about starting business and growing business and marketing, all that stuff, which is important. We are right here. This is like, take your shoes off, take your sandals off. This is holy ground. This really is where it all happens, and business owners get stuck. And I think one reason they do, Allan, is because they're talking to all their buddies in their industry who are naysayers and who are in a Winnie the Pooh situation. They're Eeyores, right?
Exactly.
I don't want to be an Eeyore. I want to be a Tigger. And Allan is a Tigger, and you need to put yourself around people like Allan to help you get out of your own mindset, to grow your business, and to realize there is so much more you can do, not simply for the money, but like Allan said, to give back to the community, to pay your people well, and to enjoy life, to have the confidence that you have deep inside of you, to bring that out, to influence people all around you. Allan,
100%.
man, you and I, we could talk honestly for hours. I love this. I love what you're doing. How do people, hopefully my audience is as excited about it as I am, how do people get a hold of you to learn more about you, what you do, what you offer, engage with, where do they go?
Yeah, probably my website, allandraper.com. Great place to reach out to me. I have a calendar link there. You can schedule a free 15-minute chat with me, see how I can help your business. I'm really getting into more passive investments. I'm an angel investor, so looking for new opportunities there. Also check out, I'm very active on my Instagram, Allan R. Draper, and then my podcast, The Business Growth Pod.
Awesome. I'm going to have the links to those in the show notes. So if you're out exercising, driving, walking the dog, whatever, and you're interested in Allan Draper, the good thing is he's smart, because he's got his website, allandraper.com. That's always a good thing to do. But you can find it in the show notes as well. And good golly, he can help you if you're starting a business, if you're thinking about starting a business, if you want to scale your business, all of that. Allan's got enough experience, enough breadth, enough knowledge to help you just think through what is that next step. And 15 minutes with Allan, you're going to find out, is incredibly valuable. So Allan, thank you for being my guest on Expert Speak. Thank you for doing what you do and for being who you are. I appreciate it, man.
My pleasure.